بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. فما بعد, my dear brothers and sisters, I want to begin with a quote of Alvin Toffler in his book Learning for Tomorrow. He says, all education springs from images of the future, and all education creates images of the future. Thus, all education, whether or so intended or not, is a preparation for the future. Unless we understand the future for which we are preparing, we do tragic damage to those we teach. This is a quote which is really worth reflecting on. Let me say to you, think agriculture. What does a farmer do? You may answer, he grows crops. Wrong. He doesn't grow anything, because to grow is not in his control. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenged those who can think. And he said, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. أفرأيتم ما تحرثون أأنتم تزرعونه أم نحن الزارعون لو نشاء لجعلناه حطاما فظلتم تفكهون إنا لمغرمون بل نحن محرومون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, tell me, the seed that you sow in the ground, is it you that make it grow, or we? Are we the grower? Were it our will, we could crumble it to dry pieces, and you would be regretful or left in wonderment, saying, we are indeed mughramun, ruined or lost. No, but we are deprived. A good farmer is one who recognizes his constraints and focuses on his strengths and does his best to leverage them. Incidentally, that's a good definition for anyone in any field, not only for farmers. Focus on strength and do your best to leverage them. So what does a farmer do? He or she creates the best possible conditions for a plant to grow. He ensures that the soil is even, free from rocks and thorns, has the correct pH value, which is acidity and alkalinity, is free from pathogens, has the required organic matter content, and is suitable for planting. He ensures that it is irrigated and protected against anything that is likely to harm the crop when it starts growing. So internal and external protection and suitability and preparation. That is all that he or she can do. That's all that the farmer can do. Create the best possible conditions. He cannot force the seed to germinate or the shoot to grow, but he can influence and change the environment such that when he plants the seed, it finds the most conducive environment for growth. Why am I talking to you about farming when we should be talking about education? Because a good teacher is like a good farmer. He or she recognizes that you can never teach anyone anything. What you can do is to create conditions where those who want to learn will be facilitated to learn and will not have to waste time and energy in coping with avoidable adverse conditions. The problem with our present system of schooling is not that it has failed, but that it is hugely successful. It has been phenomenally successful since the Industrial Revolution, which is 1760 to 1820, 1840, in producing what it was designed to produce. Mindless followers without the tools to challenge the status quo. And it does that amazingly well. Nothing can work outside its design. A car will never fly no matter how fast it goes. That's why we must redesign and reconstruct our education if we want to regain leadership. Focus determines outcome. As Rasulullah ﷺ told us, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The reward and the outcome of the deed is based on its intention. You can only achieve what you aim for. Let me share some historical facts with you for you to compare. In 1440, King Henry VI of England established Eton College, which is called the chief nurse of England's statesmen. In 1572, roughly 100 years later, Queen Elizabeth I issued a royal charter for the establishment of Harrow Public School. Between these two schools, they have produced 27 British Prime Ministers till date. Add to that heads of state of other countries, heads of corporations, generals, Nobel laureates, and princes of the church, as the Catholic and Anglican bishops and cardinals are called, and you are likely to find an Eton or Harrow graduate in almost any field of endeavor. Meanwhile, what was happening in the Muslim world? In 1933, Yusuf I, the Sultan of Granada, converted Alhambra into a royal palace. It used to be a fort. It became a royal palace in 1933. In 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella, at the end of the Christian Reconquista, made Alhambra their royal court and granted the infamous Christopher Columbus royal endorsement for his expedition to India. I can imagine Isabella flicking her wrist and saying to him, "Get lost." He did, quite literally, tragically for the Americas. In India, in the 16th century, the Mughal Empire was at its peak, accounting for over 25% of global GDP, and Emperor Shah Jahan was on the throne of Delhi. In 1632, he commissioned the Taj Mahal, which was completed in 1653, a World Heritage building, a wonder of the world, a marvel of architecture, and a tribute to its architect, Ustad Ahmad Lahori. However, in 1636, across the world from Agra, right here next door to us, in the state of Massachusetts, John Harvard, a clergyman, founded what became the Harvard University. 1632 to 1653, the Taj Mahal was built. In 1636, Harvard University was established. Today, Harvard has an endowment fund of $40.9 billion. I mentioned the endowment fund to emphasize the fact that it indicates not the wish of or gift of any king, but the focus of the people and their willingness to put their money where their mouth is. Needless to say, Harvard gave this country the highest number of presidents, and there is a Harvard graduate also in almost any field of human endeavor. And that's why I say they have the world and we have the tombs. As Muslims, we are fond of talking about global leadership and about how this is a sacred duty and a task that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us to accomplish. The question is, are we willing to put our effort and money where our mouth is? Or are we going to remain among those who talk about global leadership but spend our money to build palaces, and malls, and hotels and towers and to buy expensive toys, but not to invest in legacy projects that can change our destiny? We need to remember that no matter what we decide to do, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu will hold us accountable for what He sent us to accomplish. We can either be honored for a job well done or be punished for neglecting our duty. Let's remember that the only thing that happens merely by waiting for it is death. For everything else, we need to make effort and investment. I believe that today we are standing at a fork in history. Forks of history are times which are characterized by increased turmoil, insecurity, fear, and cataclysmic changes. But it is because of this that for a short time the foundations of the structures of society are shaken, and it is given into the hands of ordinary people to change the path of destiny. Once this window of opportunity shuts, the fate of future generations will be sealed until the next fork in history, perhaps centuries later. I believe that we are standing at a fork in history today, and that it has been given into our hands to leave a legacy of honor, if we wish. It is our call to take, And by our actions, we will be judged by our children and their children. Global leadership is not an accident. It is the result of investing thought, time, and resources consistently. That's the word, consistently, not just once, consistently, in pursuit of a vision that spans generations. People who are serious about creating global influence have long understood this. I gave you the examples and have invested unstintingly in something that they've always considered worthwhile. I believe that to achieve greatness, it is necessary to first dream of great things, and this we must not be afraid to do. Like most thinking people of our time, over the last decade, I have also been thinking about the sad state that ordinary people like us find ourselves in. Like lost sheep, we are many in number, but distracted, disconnected, and dispersed, prey to every passing wolf. All the power, authority, wealth, and influence seem to be in the hands of those who are arrayed against us, leaving us with little choice, if any, even with respect to the wealth which is apparently in our hands. Others dispose of it at will, even though on the face of it we are its owners. Like most people, I too complained, defined our problem and redefined it, discussed it, debated it, and agonized over it until I came to the conclusion that none of that was getting me any closer to a solution. Frankly, problems need solutions, not complaints. The truth is that we must totally transform what we teach, how we do it, and who does it. Because, as Erasmus said, the main hope of a nation lies in the proper education of its youth. The most important thing to understand is that the world has changed and continues to change at such a rapid pace that our own experience has lost all relevance. Our stories and all stories of the past are simply that, stories, nothing more. Unless we can teach the lessons from those stories, the data is at best interesting. The lessons, however, are invaluable, but that is only if we can teach them by extracting the lesson, conceptualizing it, and communicating it in language that makes sense in today's context. Our education today, both religious and worldly, consists of teaching discrete bits of information without showing either the link between them or how they can be applied in a modern context. Did anyone, for example, ever tell you how physics is related to chemistry or biology? Or how history and botany are related to geography? Our education is like giving me the latest box of DeWalt or Milwaukee or Black& Decker power tools. The tools are good, but I have no clue how to use them. At best, I will keep them safely. At worst, I may try to use them and injure myself or damage my property. This is the crisis of our education. We teach random facts and we examine random recall in a specific time frame called exams. The future of our children depends on their ability to vomit successfully, vomit undigested information on call. What else will you call it? This is what needs to change. That is why tweaking and adjusting won't work. We need to change totally and completely, starting with admitting that we had been doing it wrong for now 400 years, then seeking the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this crime of playing with the lives of our children and owning our responsibility to create change. As they say, if you broke it, you can fix it. There are three critical things that we must do. The first of them, focus on the core purpose of teaching. What do we want the student to be able to do? This is a profoundly serious question that is almost never asked. Most curricula are taught by default, just because they've always been taught that way. We do not realize that often this in itself is a good reason to take a second look at the curriculum to see if it still remains relevant in a world that is vastly different. I can give specific examples of this both in terms of our madaris as well as secular schools, but instead we'll ask you to meet those running the institutions that you are associated with and ask them what their curriculum is designed to produce. Then see if it is doing that and if that is what you want. If that person cannot answer that question to your satisfaction, take your child out of that school. Your child does not deserve a school where they don't know what they are producing. especially when you are paying for it with money and your child with his or her future. Number two, there must be practical classes for every subject we teach. I agree that this may pose a challenge in some subjects more than in others, but I strongly suggest that we keep this rule and hold ourselves to it. We may well be surprised at the creativity that comes forth as a result. The main and single biggest benefit of this methodology will be to bring alive every subject for the student so that they can see the power of what they have learned. Also, as time passes, new issues and problems will emerge in society, and when we have this rule of practically applying everything, we will be forced to evolve new solutions which will bring much needed change. Number three is to teach them tools. As I told you, facts, what happened has no meaning. What can you do with what happened is what has meaning. We must teach how, not what. For what, there is Wikipedia. But for how, we need teachers. Technology has made the traditional role of the teacher redundant. If a child is literate and numerate, he or she can educate themselves. That is why homeschooling has become so popular. Sites like Udemy and Khan Academy teach you almost anything at all. Children today have access to more information in one day than we had in our entire lifetimes. What they do not have is the tools to assess that information and decide what is useful and beneficial and what is useless and potentially harmful. The role of parenting and teaching must therefore change. Children need values, ethics, morals more than they need toys and smartphones. But check what we spend more money on providing. Values cannot be legislated, they must be inculcated. So ask, what values are we inculcating in our children? If you cannot answer that question instantly and back it up with specific ways in which you are doing this, then it means that you are fooling yourself. Children need positive, inspiring role models. Are you that role model? Ask the child and ask them to tell you in what way you inspire them. Parents like to talk about the duties of children towards them. I want you, parents, to ask yourself what your duty is towards your children. Are you raising pets or children? If you are only feeding and clothing and giving them a home, then they are pets, not your legacy to the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't give you your exalted status to raise pets. That is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never ran a creche or a Sunday school. He taught adults who went home and taught their children. There is a world of difference between a father who is an ATM machine and a mother who is the card, and a father who teaches his child the Quran, and a mother who introduces the child to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is your choice how you want to define yourself. After all, it is your future, which depends on it. Your children are your sadaqah jariyah. Let me ask you this question. How many of you made dua in tahajjud today for your parents and grandparents? That's just one generation ago. Did you make dua for them in tahajjud today? You are their investment. Are you a good investment, or did they waste their time? Now ask yourself another question. What kind of investment do you want your child to be for you? Only you can decide that. It's your call. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.